Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining The Collective. We are a program that celebrates arts, music, politics, lots of stuff, hence the name The Collective. And this morning we're going a little local. We're bringing in some folks who are well known in the community for their social work and politics, but we're going to deal with the social work. I have in the studio with me the co-founders of Our Kids, which is a social service agency that deals with recovery and parenting for mothers and a few other things that I'm going to let them talk to you about. So we welcome to the collective today Randy Ruben Rodriguez and Sergio Rodriguez. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning to you, and thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, this is such a pleasure. I get to kind of peek at you guys because we haven't seen each other in quite some time. It's been a while.
A long time, right?
It's been a long time. And it's been a long time because now you guys have a second floor or getting a building. So hold on. We're going to talk about that. But I want to bring you back to the very beginning. What was it that drove you all? Because it says concerned citizens. What was it that drove you and a group of folks to decide that Our Kids was something that we needed in the community? And then tell us what Our Kids is. I gave a little bit, but I want you to expand that.
I'll begin. Most of this idea for the Our Kids Family Center was generated by my experience when I came to New Haven and saw what was happening with the then entitled crack epidemic in 1990. I came the end of 89. And I was working at the Hill Health Center with pregnant substance abusing women and their babies. And we were looking at improving birth outcomes because our infant mortality rate was so very high, 19.8 per 1,000. And we created a program through a federal grant that was very, very successful. And the moms loved the program. But in the course of that time, we unfortunately also got to witness how frequently children were being removed from their mothers because of their substance abuse and their lack of a safety net to care for their children in the midst of issues of neglect, some abuse, but mostly neglect and definitely economically related. In 95, we were all part of the mangled care conversion of healthcare. And I left the Hill Health Center and realized that I had put a lot of effort into that project, the Women's Corner. Some people may remember that. We built a facility across the street from the Hill Health Center, which is now an office building. And I really thought we could make a difference. You know, Sergio and I are from, well, he's originally from Florida, but from Jersey, you know, Newark, Jersey City, big cities.
Yeah, big cities.
And when I came to New Haven, I felt it was a town. It felt like a town to me. And it felt doable. You could see the difference you made in families, right?
Yes.
Every time you went to the store, you ran into people you knew within the entire community for us, because we certainly circulated neighborhood to neighborhood. But many of our families were very insular and insulated in their neighborhood. So the Hill women were in the Hill, in Fairhaven. Fairhaven wasn't in, you know, Dixwell, Newhallville. It was all very compartmentalized. So at that time, I went to the city and I said, are there any properties around that are available? And Frank Alvarado, who was the head of LCI at the time, gave us a listing of all the properties. And we started looking around. At the same time, Sergio and I recognized this is not something we could just do alone. We needed a lot.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
Well, fortunately, my husband was a racquetball player. And in '96, we hosted our first racquetball tournament to begin getting out the word. And we invited, actually, it's 25 years almost to the month.
Wow.
March 16th, we invited 40 people to our home to brainstorm this idea of how were we going to strengthen our families and reduce the disruption as well as the dismantling of children and their parents.
Sergio, when you first heard this idea, Sergio, what did you think? Because you probably have been in New Haven a little bit longer, so you know the city.
No, not at all. Randy's here longer than I.
Randy's longer than you?
Yeah. Randy came here. Randy brought me here. Basically,
I did not know that. Obviously,
I was in New Jersey and Randy was here. We were seeing each other. I mean, we've known each other since 1980.
Okay.
In different lives, in totally different lives.
Yeah.
So our coming together was, later on in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. That was our coming together. And at that point, she had moved to. Randy worked for me at one time.
Okay.
I used to be I was a senior vice president of the Urban League in Jersey City. I was an urban leaguer for 10 years. For
a while, right?
Yeah, for 10 years. And Randy worked for me. Yeah, it was scandal. Randy worked for me as a consultant. And so we had known each other already for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So we started seeing each other, and she ended up coming to New Haven, leaving Jersey City and coming to New Haven for the job at the Women's Center, Women's Corner. And later on, she arranged it so that I would follow. So I ended up following, and then I moved to New Haven. I started working with the city in 1993, and I followed. So and then after that, it's all history.
But now, and Randy, you really have given us a context. You're telling us a story, so I don't want to interrupt the story. But I just, what is it, or what was it to the both of you that said, we need to do this with a sense of urgency? Because like you said, there were, infant mortality rates, and I know still infant mortality rates in Black and Brown communities are horrible. It's still bad. New Haven's gotten a little bit better thanks to the work of people like you all, and with some help from Community Foundation.
Haven Healthy Start.
Healthy Start. Exactly. But what is it that made you say, we can make a difference? You thought it was because it was a town and it was smaller and it was doable.
Well, I think our life experiences, also added to that. I think Randy and I have, throughout our careers, have been in the helping profession and in the, where we dealt with the most needy and the most vulnerable throughout our careers. So I think that played a big role in Randy searching for what the needs were, and had this vision. It wasn't my vision; it was Randy's vision, really, that I ended up supporting and wanting to really see come to fruition. So I think that's kind of where we kind of came from.
And I think, Michelle, your question is sort of honed in on the personal piece of this, right?
Yes.
Like what pulled our hearts in this direction.
Right.
For me, there's nothing more important in my life than my family. My family of origin. Had it not been for them, I would not be here today. In a very big host of ways. And Sergio also comes from a large, intact family. And family was very, very important to us, to the degree that when it came to buying a house, and it was just the two of us, we bought a 4-bedroom house. Because we wanted to make sure all our family could visit.
Yeah.
We didn't think that the visitors were going to be 50 children from the Department of Children and Families who were in need of foster care. Um, but you know, life has a funny way of making things happen.
Now, focusing on that, when you first decided to do this, were you even thinking that, hey, we're going to be foster parents to set an example, or did it just work out that way?
No, I think that it was very intentional. As Sergio mentioned, we had a lot of experience in the field of working with underserved, underrepresented families. My entire career was in substance abusing parents, children, adolescents, residential treatment, methadone maintenance, the whole gamut from Bridgeport, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, group homes, the whole bit. And I think that, let me see, how could I put this? I think we felt that we had this experience as professionals, right? We had this experience for decades now because we were in our late 40s when this began. It wasn't, and we began in this field in our very early 20s, but we hadn't lived this piece, the child welfare piece,
okay,
as individuals. We didn't have that experience. And right in the very beginning, in 96, which is when we began this, we proceeded to get licensed as foster parents. We wanted to know. We knew what it felt like to be the social worker. We knew what our children had experienced, but we didn't know the fostering and what children's experiences were within a foster home. And we also saw that the foster care system at that time had many flaws, and children were being bounced from one home to another, to another, to another. And I think we saw us being foster parents as a way to begin the healing process for children, because we said if we were going to do foster care, no one was going to be bounced out of our home. They were going to remain in our home until the permanent plan had been established, be it reunified, transferred to adoptive family or kin. But we were not calling the department Friday afternoon saying, get this kid out of here. That was not who we were going to be, ever.
Did you intend for that in the beginning?
Yes. Yes.
So it was a genuine nugget in this.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It was the nugget for it. Let me back up. We probably would never have become foster parents had we not decided we wanted to create this center.
Okay. All right.
Okay. But in thinking we wanted to create the center, we felt it was critical for us to have that piece of knowledge in helping us shape what kinds of services we could provide, because we would then know the challenges that foster parents experience with the Department of Children and Families, with birth families, with kin, what the children were presenting, what their needs were, what that experience really felt like 24/7. You know, sharing a bar of soap with a stranger at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, right.
You know, police removing children. And we wanted, given our backgrounds, we wanted to be a set of foster parents for the Department of Children and Families, not special foster parents, who would be available to take all those babies that they said were addicted, all those challenging teens that they said nobody wanted. And as a result, because of our professional backgrounds, we were referred babies with substance abuse histories, backgrounds, in utero exposure, and teenage girls. So at one point,
which is lovely.
We had 5 teenage girls here and a little boy. My wonderful husband.
I was going to say, it had to be a lot of patience and a lot of discipline.
It was. Woo.
And how old were the girls initially? Can you tell that?
Well, the first one that came was 6, And then after that, they were primarily between 10 and 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long
But,
did they stay with you?
Some stayed through till they were emancipated, till they were 18 or 16 in one case. Others were transitioned back to their families. Others went into youth continuum and independent living. And one of them we adopted as an adult.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Just and when you bring people in, what's that process like? Because I know in the past, when I've had friends who were foster parents, I know it's changed because of what had gone on in the past. But when you started out doing it in the early 90s, was it still sort of a bumpy process? Or did you find it something not as challenging as you expected?
I would say it had its challenges back then as well. I mean, issues of getting vouchers, the educational issues, the kids traveling around in bags. Some of the stuff still exists, but it was pretty challenging then too. The system was very challenging at that point, and even the both of us who got a lot of experience in the system had challenges within the system. So to imagine that somebody who never did that then became a foster parent, I mean, that really gave us some insight into other things that we could that Randy could do within her agency. Go ahead.
I think the other thing is that Sergio is much more pleasing in his interactions with the system than I can be.
It's a good counterbalance.
I'm much better now. But when it came to advocating for the kids, right, I was a pit bull. And there was not going to be any reason that I wasn't going to go up the line.
Right.
And I wasn't afraid to go up the line, which is very different for other foster parents.
Exactly.
Okay? And I recognize that. And on some level, it's clearly an aspect of privilege, and I am going to take that privilege. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to use that privilege to advocate for my kids. It is what it is. Right. I have that lucky fortune to have a big mouth and push, and be white, right? And all of that goes along with being privileged. However, I will tell you that as a foster parent, it was very interesting. The same recommendation I would have made as the director of my program at the Hill Health Center and presented to the court that had value was no longer valued as a foster parent.
Really?
The exact same recommendation. In one role, I was heard because I had the title. In the other, I was just a foster parent, and who was I to say that this is what this child needed?
And so
same set of expertise,
Yeah, and your experience, and you would think that would be respected as opposed to something shut down, right? So how do you get around that, Randy? Is there any getting around something like that?
Well, in fairness to the system, I think it has changed. Now, remember, we did foster care from 97 to 2007. Okay, so that was 14 years ago. And there have been not only new federal legislation that's come into being, but also new philosophy within new commissioners, right? Commissioner Katz began changing the dialogue and talking about kinship care and really putting the push on kinship.
For the state of Connecticut.
Correct. Yes. For this commissioner from DCF. And now with Commissioner Durantes, who basically professionally grew up in the DCF system, right? Began as a social worker on the front lines, and now she's the commissioner. She knows the entire system intimately on a personal level, that same personal level that I talked with you about earlier. And so I think two things are happening. One, I think nationally, people have finally begun to realize, and the research is finally showing, that growing up in foster care is not necessarily advantageous to children's well-being. Okay? Growing up in foster care is one of the 4 risk factors for adult incarceration. Growing up in foster care is one of the risk factors for young adult suicide. Growing up in foster care is one of the risk factors for homelessness and mental illness and educational dropouts. 50% of our youth nationally who reside in foster care do not graduate high school.
Wow.
So in and of itself, although foster care may physically provide a safe haven for children, in and of itself, it does not complement the whole child and the child's healthy development.
So how do you combat that? If you know these are the things that you're walking into, because children are either going to have, it seems, one of those or all 4, or going down the road to some of those. So what is it that can be done by a foster parent? Because granted, we all know parenting is difficult in the first place, right?
Right.
Nobody gives you a playbook.
No real book.
Right.
Yeah, nobody gives you a playbook. You get this little human being and you try to instill all these things in this human being. And one day they turn around and tell you, no, not doing that. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I don't care what you say. Right. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
My house.
Right. And then here comes the battle. So now you have a child that has not necessarily gotten that so-called foundation, right? And you're trying to get them on this road of not necessarily self-preservation, but certainly instilling in them what works for them, what's right, how you handle different things. And it could go with all our children, as they say, it could go left. But what is it that you can do when you know that these factors are something that are real for these children? How can you help them navigate that?
Well, first you have to recognize it, right? Second, I think it behooves us all to recognize that I have not met one parent in my entire professional career that wants to be a bad parent. The parents whose children are in these situations are 99% of the time not bad people. They are parents who have experienced their own traumas, whether it be the impact of a racist society on their upbringing and deprivations that they were forced into, whether it be their own parenting that they received as children. We did a study one year, 70% of our parents had been involved in child welfare at some point in their life.
Wow.
That's a high percentage.
That's a high percentage. Hold on to that thought, Randy. We've got to take a break. I have Randy and Sergio Rodriguez, Randy Ruben Rodriguez, and Sergio Rodriguez.
You're good, Michelle. You're good.
I'm getting there, right? Of Our Kids in New Haven. And we're talking about their organization, fostering children, and a lot of other different things. So you need to stay right here. We'll be right back. Join us on the other side of the collective here on WSME Enlightenment Radio. We're back. In the studio with me on the collective today is Randy Ruben Rodriguez and Sergio Rodriguez. They are the co-founders of Our Kids, and that is a multi-leveled social service agency that serves the New Haven population in New Haven, Connecticut. So I want to welcome them back. And we left off in a space where we were discussing the challenges that foster children sometimes are already wrapped in. So, Randy, we were saying that 75% of folks are 9 times out of 10, they grow up in a challenging system, right?
Well,
95% of the children, or the parents, I'm sorry, of foster kids at some point have encountered the system.
well, exactly what I said was that we did a study one year, and 70% of those 55 parents had grown up involved with the child welfare system. We have not done that study currently, so I don't know that.
How long ago?
Current. That was in 2009.
Okay, all right.
With a grant from the Women and Girls Fund. I don't know what the stats are for our families now, but we do know that what we witness day in and day out is multi-generational trauma. Both for the children who are removed, which is a traumatic experience, as well as for parents who come to our center.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so the center, Our Kids Family Center, was created specifically to try and address increasing the attachment and bonding and relationship between parents and their children who were separated by, a defined incident that put children at risk. And that's how the Family Center began.
So usually, and I guess it would vary as to how long parents and children are separated, correct?
Correct. When we began our center, legislation changed. And legislation said in 1997, with the Adoption Safe Families Act, children could not remain in care longer than 24 months without a decision being made. Historically, children, when we first began, we had children who had been in foster care 5, 6, 7 years, not knowing what their futures were going to be or who was going to be their permanent family. Let's face it, every child has the right to their family. Ideally, a permanent family. If it cannot be their own, then it's the next best thing, which is a permanent family, and should not be bounced every 5 or 6 months from one facility or one home to another with different rules, different regulations,
right?
Different menus,
different cultures. Different cultures.
Exactly. I mean, new sisters, right? New sisters, new brothers, new aunties. It's very, very upsetting. Very upsetting.
And that is trauma, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're getting settled in one place, like you said, the menus, the house itself, the neighborhood, all those things. And then 6 months later, somebody says, well, it's time for you to go somewhere else. Right. And it's not back to your biological family.
Correct.
And so,
but let's stress, a lot less of that is happening now.
Yes.
Than happened
when you started. Yes.
Correct.
When you started. Correct. Because like you said, it's, I think we as a country have started to look at children differently. How we deal with children, what children take in, how we treat children. And when I say treat children, foster care systems, where are the children going? Who's in their best interest, as opposed to just shuttling them, or putting them in an environment that is not it may be good for one child, but this might not be the environment for this child.
Exactly.
So I think as a country, as we are the United States, we're starting to look at children's needs and take them seriously, as opposed to, considering what adults always want for children, which may not be the best thing for the child. So you buy this building.
Well, no.
Well, okay, wait a minute. You said you went to the city and you said, where's some properties?
Correct. And Sergio, God bless him, spent every weekend for a month going through that entire list with me, driving throughout the entire city to check off on that list. Possible, no, yes, right? And so this was my criteria. It needed to be on a bus line because our families don't drive. It needed to be in a neighborhood that was going to be accepting and that they were going to be comfortable coming to, where we weren't going to have a lot of NIMBY stuff in order to get up and running, right? And we wanted to be close to the courthouse because we didn't want to waste time going back and forth and So there were these ideal lots right on Dixwell Avenue, right next to Mr. Reeves' barbershop, that had been vacant for years, right next door to Yale's corner property that was also vacant for years.
Right, it had been vacant for years, yes.
For years, and even more years after we were there. And we went back to the city and said, back to the Alders, in fact, and said, we would really like to take title of this property. And the Alders supported us in granting us that property.
What year was that?
That was in 97, I believe. Might have been 98, but I think it was 97. And before we took title, though, fortunately, we did have a lawyer on our board who said we need to make sure that the property isn't brownfields.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, sure enough, it was. And before we took title, the city agreed to remediate the property.
That was good. It was
Thank
great.
God. Okay,
yes.
So they remediated, and we were successful at securing the transfer of funds that had been identified for Dixwell for maternal child health to us. Pete Gray originally was going to be creating a maternal child center with St. Martin de Porres that never got off the ground. And the governor at the time, Governor Rowland, was ready to take this money back. So the health department spoke with Pete, and Pete was willing to relinquish the $425,000 to us. We got it approved by the state, and then we brought in an architect while Sergio was busy playing racquetball, which I don't do, and raising money and raising awareness, right? Our first tournament, we brought in $12,000. We bought a computer. We bought stationery. We had a logo design, business cards, and I was up in the nursery with the babies in foster care writing grants. And we were smart. We hired Holt, Wexler, and Farnham to write our first grant. That was a really, in retrospect, an even smarter decision than we realized at the time, I think. So while we were trying to get more money for the building, because the estimates came back much higher, we were also looking to DCF to fund this project that I designed, that I called the Family Center. Because at the time, as I said earlier, the Adoption Safe Families Act said every child welfare agency had to provide opportunities for families to reunify within the first 13 to 18 months, i.e. family centers, center-based visitation.
Wow. So that means you guys were really moving fast.
Right.
Like people were coming in and you were really, yeah. Yeah, because that's woo. And how many
Yeah.
people at the time?
So, well, we didn't have clients at that point. We were building the building and trying to get funding from DCF for the program. In 2000, DCF awarded us a contract. After it went out to bid, we bid on it with other agencies throughout the state. And each region was funded to do a family center. And we were successful at getting that. And
so initially, how many people?
So initially we had 100 families that we were seeing. Once like 100 families for the year. At any given time, we were working with 25 families. And at that time, that contract allowed us to work with families for a year. And we could renew working with those families for another 6 months. That time period has changed over the years. And so now, basically, the maximum period of time we have to work with a family exclusively on reunification is 6 months with a 2-month follow-up. However, now our Kids Family Center has a contract with the Department of Children and Families where we provide a 30-day assessment to determine if a family is ready for reunification, and we say yes or no. A 12-week period where we do therapeutic family time, where we do coaching with parents to help them remediate some of the challenges that they have and maintain those attachments with their children. And then we do the 6-month program as well. That's just our reunification work. There are a variety of other programs that we also offer at this point, right? We have an after-school program for children who are residing in foster care. And hopefully in this next upcoming school year, we'll be successful at securing an on-site teacher so that those children who are residing in foster care that are having difficulty in school can participate in a day program at our new expanded center and continue to get educational credits.
So obviously you said some of the reasons why you felt the need to make your space a little bit larger. So when did you see that? Like, was it like,
when
okay, we're looking
building. When she built the first building because she put the capacity to put a second floor on it. I didn't even know that.
And when did you find out, Sergio?
When she decided she wanted to put a second floor on, and she wanted to expand and do the trauma center for infants. That's what I found out. I didn't even realize that she had built it to have a second floor. So,
well, see, that's what happened.
That thought was already there when the building first went up.
When you first got it, right?
So that's Randy's thinking, sustainability and what's in the future and what's going to happen.
Well, let's be realistic. Our next door neighbor was Yale University.
Right, we're going to go there.
They were not going to relinquish any property to us, so we couldn't go make a lateral move, toward the city.
Yeah.
And the building next to us was Mr. Reeves' barbershop, which we thought would be there forever. And the apartments above. And then beyond that was Key's Funeral Home. So even if Mr. Reeves, who was in his 70s at the time, was going to sell the property, his building was only about 30 feet wide.
Right.
So I knew that wasn't going to be a whole lot of space. So right from the beginning, we built it with the capacity to expand up. And so here we are.
About your services. Tell us what you're offering to the community.
Okay. So in the expansion or currently?
Both.
Okay. Currently, and this is important, when we began our Kids Family Center, while the building was being built, we collaborated with Christian Community Action and Reverend Grubbs and sublet some space over at 660 Winchester while the first building was being built. Now that we're expanding, we are once again collaborating with Reverend Grubbs, and we are in the lower level again, i.e. the basement, but lower level sounds much better. However, we have the whole other side of the building on the lower level while our new building is being completed. So it's very full circle.
So you mentioned a nursery.
Uh-huh.
So physically, what do you offer in that building?
In our new facility, we are going to have a state-of-the-art infant, toddler, family trauma center where babies under the age of 3, which will probably end up being under the age of 4 because you're still 3, right? Until you're 4.
Right.
Up to 12 babies. I'm going to call them all babies, even though 3 and 4 are toddlers, can participate in a childcare-like environment while their parents are also participating in services for their parents and services for parents with their children on site, so that attachment and bonding, be it children or infants who are at risk of being removed, and the department sees, well, if you participate in this program, we'll keep your babies with you, right? Because we see that as really important for attachment and bonding, both for the babies as well as the parents. Or for those babies who are removed early in life, to have an opportunity for parents to be with their babies every day. So it will be a 5-day-a-week program. And the wraparound services for parents will include, on-site substance abuse recovery group, a parenting group, an early childhood development play group where parents and their babies play together in the infant toddler childcare licensed facility. But it will not be a childcare center for people to bring their babies, drop them off, and then come pick them up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
that's not what we're doing.
Yeah, that's not where you are.
No, there are many
something different. Yeah,
exactly. And there are many very, very good childcare providers. You don't need to replicate that. And in fact, part of our reason for doing this is we heard from a variety of childcare providers that they have these babies in their care who are either babies who are in foster care or recently adopted, who are really having difficulty regulating. And so they bring in additional staff that DCF pays for to assist, just manage that one baby on site, because this is a big need, these babies who have been traumatized.
Now, when you say regulate, what does that mean? And what does that look like?
So frequently, infants and toddlers who have experienced some form of trauma, be it the removal in and of itself, be it hunger related, be it maybe 10% of the time major physical related, babies have a difficult time settling down and comforting themselves. So you will see them thrashing a lot, not being able to fall asleep in an easy way, very, very fussy eaters, upset stomachs all the time. They may not nurse well, right? So there are all those kinds of self-comforting things that babies typically learn how to do. These babies don't know how to do.
Okay.
And part of the challenge with the babies, and I know this for myself as having been a foster mom of one of these babies, regardless of how much you may love a child, at some point, this can really, really get on your nerves.
Yeah.
Because the babies don't stop crying.
Right.
They don't stop crying, whether you swaddle them tight, whether you sing to them, whether you hug them, whether you feed them, whether you change them, whether you bathe them. they're really, really uptight little guys. And girls, of course. And I mean, we had a baby in our home. I had to put that baby in their crib just because there was nothing left I could do with
that you
them,
could do. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Not only
Yeah.
for them, but for me too, because I was
Right.
ready to pull my hair out, you know? And it was much longer and darker at the time. But, you know, it's hard. It's hard for these babies, and it makes it that much harder for parents,
Correct.
right?
That's what I was
Because
going to say. Yeah. Especially
they're
if
already
you're,
stressed. They're
Right.
already stressed.
the parents
right?
are
And-
already stressed, and especially if you're a new parent.
Exactly. Exactly. And particularly if you haven't had any real examples
Correct.
of parenting. You know, the young person who's been raised in foster care, they've gotten 4 different sets of information about how to
Right.
parent.
Right.
And the other thing is that when you learn something from your mother, it's very, very ingrained in how you parent.
It's
Right
very
or wrong.
personal. Yes.
Right or wrong, okay? I grew up the oldest of 4 girls, okay? So I did a lot of parenting, right, of those little ones.
Yeah.
My mother taught me never put a baby on its back after you fed them to put them down in their crib, because they may throw up and on
Right.
their back they'll
Right.
suffocate, right? Well, guess what? Now everything is back to bed,
Yes.
right? With the incidence of SIDS,
Right.
babies get put on their backs in their cribs with no bumpers, right? To protect them from the railings,
Right.
which is what we thought bumpers were for.
We're 4. Right.
However, we know now babies suffocate from those bumpers and get their heads caught in them. And we have SIDS. But as a mom, it was very, very hard for me to put those babies on their backs. And I typically made a Tootsie Roll so I could put them on their side, which was also acceptable. So for me, that
Yeah.
was like, right? And I know all of these, you know, stats.
And you're an
I know the
experienced
research,
person.
but
Right.
that's what my mom told me.
Right.
And my mom was right in my head. So, you know, here, I'll give you a good example. I read a report quite a while back, from a clinician who said, mom and baby come into my office, and when she feeds the baby, she has the baby sitting on her lap, and she's feeding the baby with the bottle facing the baby rather than eye-to-eye contact with the baby. And she saw that as a weakness
Mm.
in the mom's parenting. However, this mom takes the bus.
Right.
This mom cannot afford to keep her eyes off of what is going on in the bus when she is there with her baby. You don't have that luxury
Mhm.
of being on a bus, feeding your baby this way. You feed your baby this way. It's a protective factor,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so if we don't approach our families from a strength-based position, you know, if you've had your child for 9 years and the department has never been involved with you, and all of a sudden they're involved, something happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Something
Right.
happened.
Right.
So our expansion, we're really excited that we'll have our new infant toddler family trauma center. We'll have expanded space for the community to come in and use our space for training. We will have also an adoption center for those babies and those young adults who have been adopted, because adoption is a life journey. It's not just a singular event.
Right.
A whole support program for that. And the best thing, my staff will actually have their own lunchroom. Finally.
She has a great
Finally.
staff. She has a great staff. The agency functions well and does great work because of the staff she has.
And really,
How many
I
people?
there are a total of 12 of us.
Okay.
And all of my staff, with the exception of 3 of us, are social workers and providers to our families. So we have a very thin infrastructure. And, our building, we're very, very excited about this expansion on Dixwell.
Ooh, can you show it?
I can.
Is it in there?
We are the first. I don't know if you can see it or
Nice.
not.
Yes.
We are the first non-Yale owned property on Dixwell Avenue. And we are very, very excited to be able to expand and include not only the DCF community, but the broader neighborhood and community, because we believe in respecting tradition and building on hope. That is the underlying foundation for our organization. And we believe that with each child, the world begins anew.
I like that. I like that. That's wonderful. In closing, Sergio, if you had to let the community know about your organization, what is it that you want them to know about what you do and how you do it?
Well, I think they're a gem. I think the Our Kids Family Center is a gem in the community that really focuses in and provides very heartfelt, passionate service to those families who come into their agency who are most vulnerable and really have the most need. And I would say that that they have really built on a dream and are providing hope and commitment and compassion to the community.
Wonderful mission statement. Like that. I like what you all are doing. If folks want to know more, if they want to donate, can people donate to you?
They can. They can go on our website, www.r, the letter R, kids, KIDSCT.org. And they can donate. They can always call us at 203-865-KIDS, 203-865-5437. Feel free to ask for me or Anna Garcia, who's our director of programs. And, I can't say enough about how important permanency for children is, right? Providing permanency for children, regardless of whether the outcome is reunification, kinship care, or adoptive families. We do all of that. It is not a singular only this or only adoption or only kinship. Mm-hmm. We want what's in the child's best interest, which is always our guiding light. And it is a staff team that is dedicated beyond any group I've ever worked with, who are really, really looking for the family's best interests. And without a stable family, our community is not going to be able to flourish.
And that's the truth. And we need that. Randy, Sergio, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Michelle, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now you're a podcast pro.
Amen.
Well.
Now you're a podcast pro. You have nothing to worry about. Got it all got it done. But thank you so much.
And thank you. And we will be having a ribbon cutting.
When?
Hopefully in August.
Okay.
We will do it virtually as well as live, because maybe everybody won't be vaccinated, but hopefully we will be.
We will be. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Randy, Ruben Rodriguez, and Sergio Rodriguez, co-founders of Our Kids. Thank you again for being here, Randy. Real quick, because I got like 30 seconds.
March 4th, the Schubert Theater, we're live streaming a play called The Good Adoptee. The e-blast will be coming out soon. So I hope you join us, and it'll have a talk
Michelle,
back
hope you join us.
with adult adoptees afterwards.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'll have you come back for about 10 minutes and talk about it, okay?
Okay,
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being on The Collective. This has been The Collective on WSME Enlightenment Radio. I'm Michelle Turner. Thank you all for being with us today. Chat soon.